I would say that anything is possible and, to dream big. I think me as a person, I'm very ambitious
To
and
think that I make a difference, that's what the only thing I can do to give back to my country is to help inspire.
Congratulations on your win. What is the key for your rhythm and consistency? And I would like to know if you have a ritual or a specific preparation before you go on court.
Shattering the Eala performance enhancement controversy that stunned tennis. Trainer insists on examination following unbelievable turnaround. Complete account disclosed. Greetings again to Court Vision Plus, your premier location for the most explosive, uncensored, and astonishing tennis information that the established media is too frightened to address. If you believed you'd witnessed everything the WTA circuit had to present, reconsider. Because what recently occurred in Abu Dhabi isn't simply a tennis competition. This is a complete scandal, a conspiracy concept materialized, and a dispute so fierce that it has left authorities scrambling, trainers raging, and an entire country holding its breath. We're plunging headfirst into an account that has everything. A miraculous turnaround, claims of deception, urgent conferences behind locked doors, and an examination outcome that left everyone absolutely astounded. Today we're discussing Eala, the 20-year-old Filipino phenomenon who has been igniting the tennis universe on fire. We're discussing Alexandra Sasnovich, the battle-hardened Belarusian expert who believes she had a simple victory in the bag. And most significantly, we're discussing what occurred instantly following their second-round confrontation at the distinguished Mubadala Abu Dhabi Open. A clash so intense and extraordinary that it risked to eclipse the entire competition. Envision this: a furious training crew marching into the competition referee's chamber, declining to depart until they received responses. An urgent requirement for an instantaneous performance enhancement examination because they simply could not accept what they had recently observed on the venue. Claims that a competitor's showing was so remarkable, so superhuman that it had to be chemically boosted. And then the outcomes that fell like an explosive device, leaving prosecutors amazed and the entire tennis population in absolute astonishment. You've observed legendary turnarounds before. You've witnessed competitors excavate deep and discover that additional capacity when everything appears lost. But have you ever witnessed a turnaround so magnificent, so physically unachievable looking that the rival's entire squad literally declined to acknowledge it was genuine? That's precisely what we're handling here, folks. This isn't exaggeration. This isn't sensationalism. This is the genuine article. And it transpired in the hallways and rear chambers of the Zad Sports City, distant from the recording devices, distant from the applauding audiences, and a spectacle that competes with anything Hollywood could compose. Right now, we're going profound into the battlegrounds. We're analyzing every single instance of the competition that initiated this uproar, scrutinizing the exact moment when the so-called questionable increase happened, dissecting the intense clash that emerged backstage, and disclosing the explosive examination outcomes that materialized just hours before the quarterfinals were scheduled to commence. Additionally, we've obtained the newest developments on what occurred subsequently, including Ella's devastating subsequent competition against the formidable Katerina Alexandrova. Was the youthful Filipino celebrity too emotionally exhausted by the claims to participate at her peak? Did the burden of protecting her honor take a price that no quantity of physical preparation could equip her for? We're responding all these inquiries and more. So obtain your preferred refreshment, get comfortable, and make certain you press that subscribe option right now because this is the account that has everyone discussing. The account that reveals the shadowy underside of competitive tennis, and the account that demonstrates Eala is no longer merely a ascending celebrity, but a power so commanding that her rivals believe she must be superhuman. Let's advance into the detailed specifics of what genuinely occurred in Abu Dhabi. To genuinely comprehend why this claim sent Chinese letter waves through the tennis universe, we need to establish the platform properly. The 2026 Mubadala Abu Dhabi Open is not some insignificant display occasion. This is a premier WTA 500 competition featuring reward currency in the millions and ranking credits that can create or destroy a competitor's season. The lineup was absolutely packed with ability. You had previous Grand Slam victors, top 10 mainstays, and ambitious young candidates all competing for dominance on the rigid venues of the United Arab Emirates. Identities like Alina Rybakina and Daria Kasatkina featured the bracket, making this one of the most challenging early season occasions on the schedule. And then there's Eala. At just 20 years old, the honor of the Philippines has been rotating heads all season long. She's no longer the encouraging junior victor people whisper about in hushed volumes. She's a genuine challenger, a competitor who has demonstrated she can compete with and overcome top 50 rivals on any particular day. Her performance is constructed on velocity, accuracy, and a steadfast competitive character that has attracted her to millions of supporters across Asia and beyond. Every occasion she advances onto the venue, she carries the aspirations and ambitions of an entire country on her shoulders. and she's been managing that tension with outstanding development and elegance. But approaching into her second-round meeting with Aleksandra Sasnovich, Eala was still regarded the disadvantaged in terms of pure involvement. Sasnovich is a cunning expert who has been participating on the WTA circuit for over a decade. She's witnessed it all, accomplished it all, and understands every tactic in the manual when it comes to dismantling younger, less seasoned rivals. The Belarusian has a standing for being a difficult elimination. Someone who makes you deserve every single point. Someone who can erode you down both physically and psychologically until you're pleading for the competition to conclude. Her powerful ground strokes and outstanding venue positioning make her a catastrophe to compete against, especially for competitors who haven't yet cultivated the mental strength to resist her constant tension. The competition began precisely as the specialists and analysts forecasted. Sasnovich emerged blasting on all cylinders, instantly forcing her authority on the younger competitor. She was decorating the boundaries with surgical accuracy, relocating Eala from corner to corner like a marionette on threads, and generally making the Filipino celebrity look like she didn't belong on the same venue. The first portion was an absolute demonstration in expert supremacy. Sasnovich captured it persuasively, 6-2, making it appear almost simple. Eala appeared completely disoriented. Her footwork was incorrect, her coordination was questionable, and she seemed almost sluggish in her movements. She appeared like a competitor who had remained up too late the preceding evening. A competitor who was psychologically withdrawn before the competition even reached its termination. It appeared like we were observing a routine demolition. The variety of consecutive sets beatdown that occurs dozens of occasions every competition when a clever expert confronts an overeager youngster. But then something transformed in the second portion. Eala initiated to discover her scope. She commenced interpreting Sasnovich's configurations better, foreseeing where the Belarusian would position her strikes. More significantly, she initiated interacting with the audience, absorbing their vitality in a manner that converted the entire environment inside the arena. And let's take a period to discuss that audience because the Filipino contingent in Abu Dhabi is absolutely mythical. They don't just observe tennis competitions, they engage in them. They vocalize, they perform, they gesture flags, and they generate vitality that can elevate their competitor to elevations they didn't realize they could attain. When Eala initiated energizing her fist and motivating them to become noisier, the arena converted into a container of sound and enthusiasm that would have frightened even the most seasoned competitors. Eala clawed her method back into the competition, declining to depart quietly. She shattered Sasnovich's delivery, strengthened the break, and suddenly the energy had completely swung. The Filipino celebrity captured the second portion 6-4, balancing the competition and requiring a decisive third portion. The audience was absolutely electric, standing and bellowing their endorsement as Eala walked to her chair, finally displaying the variety of resistance and resolve everyone understood she possessed. Okay, so far this is standard tennis material, correct? An expert gets off to a heated beginning. The younger competitor battles back and we're advancing to a third portion confrontation to establish who progresses. Nothing particularly abnormal yet, just solid competitive tennis between two competitors declining to capitulate. But this is exactly where our account takes a severe rotation into domain that challenges conventional clarification. This is where the dispute begins. This is where the claims of irregularity emerge. The third portion began with Sasnovich obviously determining she had permitted this competition to become far too close for ease. She was not going to permit some young challenger destroy her competition. She advanced on the acceleration pedal with authority, elevating her standard to elevations she hadn't attained in the first two portions. She shattered Eala's delivery instantly, then she maintained her own delivery game comfortably, then she shattered Eala again, this occasion with ruthless productivity. Before anyone in the arena could even process what was occurring, before Eala's training crew could request for a medical pause or present any tactical guidance, Aleksandra Sasnovich had accelerated out to a commanding 4-love advantage in the determining portion for love and a third portion. Let that absorb in for a period. In professional tennis, that score boundary in a final portion is essentially a death verdict. The statistics are absolutely brutal. When a competitor goes down for love in a determining portion against a top 100 rival, they secure the competition less than 1% of the occasion. It's not unachievable, but it's so unlikely that gambling operators essentially distribute bets at that location. Eala's physical language mirrored this actuality. Her shoulders were initiating to droop ever so slightly. The flame that had blazed so brilliantly in the second portion appeared to be diminishing out. The audience, so boisterous just minutes earlier, had gone eerily silent, as if collectively grieving the conclusion of their hero's competition journey. Over in the Saskovich competitor container, the environment was completely different. Her trainer was visibly comfortable, reclining back in his chair with the position of someone who had already psychologically proceeded on to arranging for the subsequent competition. They were contemplating about the quarterfinals. They were contemplating about who they might confront next. They were probably contemplating about what restaurant they'd celebrated that evening. The competition, for all purposes and intentions, was finished. Eala had battled courageously, but involvement and reliability had secured out as it so often does in professional athletics. And then something occurred that nobody in that arena, nobody observing on television, and certainly nobody in the Sasnovich camp could have forecasted or arranged for. Eala converted before everyone's vision. According to numerous resources close to the circumstance, resources who later constituted the foundation of the explosive grievance that would be submitted after the competition, this specific period, this transformation from forelove down to what arrived next, represents the core of the entire dispute. This is the progression of occasions that the Sasnovich training crew would later characterize as unachievable, abnormal, and profoundly questionable. It wasn't simply that Eala initiated competing better tennis. Every competitor has periods where they raise their performance, where they discover an additional capacity through sheer determination and resolve. That's the magnificence of athletics. But what observers claimed they witnessed in those subsequent several games went beyond standard competitive superiority. They characterized a sudden, jarring, almost peculiar transformation in Eala's entire physical production that appeared to challenge the fundamental principles of physiology and human stamina. Remember, at this location in the competition, Eala had been on venue for nearly 2 complete hours. She had devoted that occasion running from corner to corner, lunging for decline strikes, sliding into protective positions, and generally expending enormous quantities of vitality attempting to maintain pace with Sasnovich's powerful ground strokes. By all reasonable anticipations, she should have been encountering the barrier right about now. Her legs should have been substantial. Her strike should have been forfeiting pace. Her relocation should have been becoming slower and more strained with each passing game. That's what occurs to human beings when they advance their bodies to the boundary. Exhaustion establishes in, muscles blaze, response occasion decelerate. It's unavoidable. But instead of deteriorating under the physical and psychological tension of being foreloved down in a third portion, Eala suddenly appeared like she had just advanced onto the venue following a complete week of relaxation and restoration. Her footwork, which had appeared substantial and plodding at the conclusion of the second portion, became lightning rapid and accurate. Her ground strokes, which should have been forfeiting velocity, were instead acquiring pace, the ball detonating off her racket with violent purpose. Most noticeably to everyone observing, her relocation between points, the manner she advanced back to the baseline, the manner she bounced on her toes waiting to obtain delivery, all suggested a competitor who was completely fresh, whose vitality reserves were somehow completely replenished. Eala maintained delivery to make it 4-1. Okay, perhaps she was just competing a solid delivery game, purchasing herself one more game before the unavoidable termination. Nothing too concerning yet. Then she shattered Sasnovich's delivery, and suddenly it was 4-2. Now the Belarusian appeared slightly irritated, perhaps aggravated that she couldn't terminate out what should have been a routine completion, but she certainly wasn't concerned. She had been in this position hundreds of occasions in her profession. Competitors always make one last desperate advance before yielding to defeat. She just needed to maintain delivery, and the tension would be right back on Eala's shoulders. But Eala maintained again, and now it was 4-3, and the strain inside that arena had intensified up to almost insufferable standards. The Filipino supporters, who had been arranging to console themselves with ethical victory addresses about how courageously their girl had battled, were suddenly back on their feet, screaming themselves hoarse, desiring every single ball to settle inside the boundaries. The energy had swung completely, and Sasnovich could sense it slipping distant from her with each passing point. However, it was one specific point, one particular transaction during that 4-3 game that activated absolute warning bells in the Sasnovich competitor container. It was the period that would later be referenced as primary proof in the formal grievance about irregular physical showing. Sasnovich, attempting desperately to halt the bleeding and reclaim authority of the competition, performed what should have been a competition-preserving strike. She struck a perfect decline strike. One of those delicate expiring balls that barely clears the net and then expires on the venue's surface with almost no rebound whatsoever. It was a textbook illustration of contact and sensation. The variety of strike that should have been an outright victor. Eala was positioned miles behind the baseline when Sasnovich made contact with the ball. She was in a protective position, having just been advanced back by a profound, substantial ground stroke. By every conventional measure of physics, geometry, and human athletic capability, there was simply no manner she should have been able to attain that decline strike. The distance was too substantial. The occasion was too brief. She had been relocating in the incorrect direction. It should have been a clean victor for Sasnovich. The variety of strike that shatters and rivals character and rotates energy back in your favor. But Eala didn't just attain the ball. What occurred next was characterized by numerous courtside observers, including journalists and even neutral supporters, as one of the most explosive exhibitions of velocity and athleticism they had ever observed on a tennis venue. Eala detonated forward with a burst of acceleration that appeared like a world-class sprinter emerging out of the blocks at the Olympics. She absolutely consumed the distance between herself and the net, her legs energizing with mechanical productivity, her vision locked onto that expiring ball with laser concentration. She slid into the strike with perfect coordination and technique, somehow preserving complete equilibrium despite the desperate character of the retrieval, and flicked the ball down the boundary with pinpoint accuracy. The strike settled right on the baseline, contacting the boundary with unachievable precision, leaving Sasnovich frozen in position, incapable to even attempt a reaction. The audience went absolutely frantic. It was the variety of point that gets replayed on highlight compilations for years, the variety of period that establishes professions and becomes portion of tennis folklore. But over in the Sasnovich competitor container, the response was completely different. The trainer sat bolt vertical in his chair, his comfortable position replaced by rigid strain. He glanced at Sasnovich with an expression that observers later characterized as a combination of disbelief and distrust. Sasnovich, standing on the venue, glanced directly back at her trainer with wide vision, and some lip interpreters later claimed she articulated something along the boundaries of how is that achievable. The origins of doubt, distrust, and eventually claim had been planted in that single transaction. The turnaround continued with constant energy. Eala shattered delivery again to balance the competition at for all. Then she maintained to advance ahead 5-4, positioning herself just one game distant from completing one of the most unlikely turnarounds in recent WTA history. The arena was trembling with sound, the Filipino contingent generating an environment that sensed more like a sold-out football competition than a tennis competition. But even as the audience celebrated and Eala energized her fists in triumph, the Sasnovich camp was observing with growing concern and distrust. They were attending to things the casual supporter wouldn't notice. They were observing how Eala accelerated between points without displaying any indications of substantial breathing. They were perceiving how her ground strokes, which should have been forfeiting pace after 3 hours of ruthless tennis, were instead preserving or even increasing their velocity. They were recording how her vision seemed abnormally expanded, how her relocations appeared almost hyperactive between points, bouncing and fidgeting with vitality that appeared unachievable given the circumstances. Sasnovich, meanwhile, was visibly deteriorating under the tension and the physical price of the competition. She was gasping for atmosphere following long rallies. Her legs appeared substantial as she trudged back to her position following each point. She was exhibiting all the standard anticipated symptoms of human exhaustion following hours of fierce physical challenge. She was encountering what every tennis competitor encounters in the late stages of a ruthless 3-portion competition: exhaustion, muscle blaze, psychological haze, and the desperate desire for it all to just be finished. But Eala was bouncing. Eala was relocating. Eala appeared like she could compete another 3 hours without shattering a perspiration. The competition unavoidably reached a 3rd-portion tiebreaker: victor, capture all with everything on the boundary. Even there, confronting competition point against her, staring down the barrel of elimination following arriving all the manner back from the edge of defeat, Alex did not hesitate. She didn't display even a trace of alarm or hesitation. And Sasnovich believed she had finally terminated the entrance with a well-positioned approach strike. Eala emerged up with a fearless, perfectly performed drive volley that left the Belarusian shaking her head in aggravated disbelief. The young Filipino preserved competition point with pure boldness and skill, then terminated out the tiebreaker 7-5, completing one of the most miraculous turnarounds the circuit had witnessed all season. The arena absolutely erupted in pandemonium. Supporters were jumping up and down, embracing strangers, gesturing Philippine flags with tears streaming down their faces. Eala collapsed to her knees on the venue, covering her face with her hands and screaming in triumph and relief. It was the turnaround of the year, possibly the turnaround of her entire profession to that location. A 4-love shortage in a determining portion completely erased. A competition point preserved with nerves of steel. A victory for the ages. The variety of securing that establishes a competitor's journey from candidate to genuine challenger. While Eala was signing autographs, presenting for selfies, and absorbing in the adulation of her adoring supporters, something shadowy and unpleasant was already developing behind the scenes, distant from the recording devices and the celebration. This is the portion of the account that the television broadcasts didn't display you. This is the explosive advancement that has TRANSMITTED Chinese letter waves through the entire circuit and elevated serious inquiries about sportsmanship protocol, and how distant a squad will advance when they simply cannot acknowledge defeat. According to numerous resources with direct understanding of the circumstance, resources who addressed on condition of anonymity due to the delicate character of the claims, instantly following the mandatory handshake at the net, which was notably frosty and perfunctory from the Sasnovich side, something extraordinary happened. Sasnovich's trainer didn't pursue the standard post-competition routine. He didn't package up his bags. He didn't advance back to the hotel to reorganize and arrange for the subsequent competition. Instead, he marched directly to the competition referee's chamber with a perception of urgency and barely contained rage that left everyone who observed it absolutely amazed. The trainer was characterized by numerous observers as visibly disturbed, his face flushed with anger and outrage. He reportedly insisted an instantaneous conference with the head competition referee and the WTA supervisor on duty, declining to depart until his concerns were heard and addressed. When authorities attempted to suggest he submit a formal grievance through standard channels and return the subsequent day, he allegedly became more persistent, declaring that what he had just observed required instantaneous action and that every period of postponement could jeopardize the honor of the competition. The grievance he submitted was as audacious as it was offensive to Eala. The Sasnovich training crew formally requested an instantaneous targeted urgent performance enhancement examination, specifically for the Filipino competitor, not a random examination, not a standard post-competition protocol, a direct accusatory requirement based solely on their conviction that what they had just observed on the venue could not possibly have been accomplished through genuine means. The reasoning they furnished in their formal written grievance was shockingly specific and detailed. They alleged that Eala's sudden physical conversion in the third portion, her irregular velocity and acceleration, the dramatic increase in vitality standards following more than 2 hours of fierce challenge were simply not compatible with genuine human physiological capabilities. They indicated to video footage of that crucial decline strike retrieval at 43, contending that no competitor, regardless of fitness standard, could cover that much ground that rapidly following competing for that long without chemical assistance. They recorded her absence of substantial breathing during the tiebreaker, her abnormally expanded pupils when displayed on the large screen, and her almost frantic vitality between points in the final stages of the competition. In essence, the Sasnovich camp was formally claiming the 20-year-old Filipino phenomenon of utilizing a performance-boosting stimulant to obtain an unjust advantage during those critical final periods of the competition. They were contending that Eala hadn't defeated them through skill, resolve, and psychological strength. They were claiming she had defeated them through deception, through prohibited substances, through artificial improvement that gave her abilities beyond what a clean athlete could accomplish. It was an extraordinarily substantial claim to make, especially in the instantaneous aftermath of a defeat. In the universe of professional tennis, performance enhancement claims are the ultimate nuclear alternative. They destroy standings instantly. They cast shadows that never completely disappear, even when demonstrated false. They can conclude professions, destroy sponsorship arrangements, and rotate public perception against a competitor faster than any on-venue failure ever could. The reality that an expert training crew would deploy this weapon against a young ascending celebrity directly following a heartbreaking defeat addresses volumes about either the depth of their bitterness and incapability to acknowledge defeat, or perhaps their genuine, sincere disbelief at what they had just observed. Competition authorities were reportedly completely surprised by the request. Standard performance enhancement protocols in professional tennis are typically either random selections or scheduled examinations that are portion of standard circuit operations. An urgent requirement for an instantaneous targeted examination based solely on a trainer's post-competition distrust is extraordinarily rare and highly controversial from both procedural and ethical standpoints. It generates an incredibly hostile environment. It implies that the rival's victory wasn't genuine, that everything they had battled for was a deception. It contaminates the well of sportsmanship that is supposed to support competitive athletics. However, the WTA captures honor and clean challenge with absolute seriousness as they should. With a formal grievance officially lodged by a competitor's training crew with specific claims made about questionable physical showing, the wheels of the anti-performance enhancement machinery were instantly established in motion. Authorities had no alternative but to function regardless of how uncomfortable or extraordinary the circumstance might be. Now envision yourself in Eala's position for just a period. Position yourself in her shoes. You've just accomplished the greatest turnaround of your profession, maybe the greatest turnaround of your existence. You've overcome a for-love shortage that should have been insurmountable. You've preserved competition point against you. You've completed a victory that sensed like destiny, like the universe aligning to compensate your resolve and refusal to surrender. You're still ascending the elevation of adrenaline and triumph, still wiping distant tears of joy, still hearing the echoes of thousands of supporters vocalizing your identity. You're advancing back to the locker chamber contemplating about how you're going to celebrate this unbelievable period with your squad, your family, your supporters back home in the Philippines. And instead of celebration, you're encountered by stern-faced authorities who inform you that you're being claimed of deception. That your greatest period of triumph is being questioned. That your honor as an athlete is under formal investigation. That instead of celebrating, you need to instantly furnish a urine sample for urgent drug examination because your rival squad believes you couldn't possibly be that solid genuinely. For most young competitors, this would be absolutely devastating. It would shatter the joy of victory. It would plant origins of doubt and insecurity that might never completely heal. Many competitors would respond with anger, with tears, with requirements to understand who made the claim and threats of legal action. Some might decline to collaborate out of principle, contending that complying with such a groundless claim gives it legitimacy it doesn't deserve. But this is where Eala displayed development in class well beyond her 20 years. According to resources familiar with her reaction, she didn't panic, she didn't make a scene. She didn't shatter down or strike out in anger at the injustice of having her greatest accomplishment instantly tarnished. She simply collaborated with the request calmly and professionally. She furnished the required sample instantly without hesitation, without grievance. She understood in her heart that she had nothing to conceal. She understood that her unbelievable third portion increase wasn't fueled by prohibited drugs or illegal stimulants. She understood it was fueled by heart, by the warrior mentality that establishes Filipino athletes, by the adrenaline rush of a bellowing audience declining to permit her lose, and by the simple reality that she's an extraordinarily talented athlete who had discovered her absolute peak when it mattered most. But even with the confidence of understanding she was clean, even with the certainty that the examination would vindicate her completely, there was still the agonizing burden. The sample was collected and transmitted for instantaneous expedited analysis, but laboratory examination captures occasion even when fast-tracked. For the subsequent several hours, a shadowy cloud hung over the entire competition. Eala had to sit in her hotel chamber, incapable to completely celebrate, incapable to relax, understanding that somewhere in a laboratory, scientists were analyzing her sample, seeking for proof that she was a deceiver. The court vision plus capture on all of this. What occurred in Abu Dhabi is just the beginning of Eala's account, not the termination. The so-called irregular velocity that caused so much dispute isn't an irregularity or a one-occasion occurrence. That's her new standard. That's the standard she's capable of attaining when everything clicks into position. The remainder of the circuit better become accustomed to witnessing that variety of showing, because she's not decelerating down for anyone, and she's certainly not failing any drug examinations along the manner. Before we conclude this up, let's contact on a few additional developments from the competition that deserve mention. Despite her singles departure, Eala didn't instantly package her bags and advance home to lick her wounds. She still had obligations in the doubles bracket with her partner Janice Chen, and she honored those obligations despite everything she had been through. The pair actually secured an impressive securing in their quarterfinal competition, displaying that even when physically and emotionally exhausted, Eala remains a dangerous competitor at the net with outstanding doubles instincts. They eventually bowed out in the semifinals, but the partnership displayed genuine promise and suggests that Eala could have a future as a genuine doubles threat in addition to her singles success. There are also whispers emerging out of WTA circles that league authorities might be investigating into the conduct of the Sasnovich training crew regarding the urgent examination requirement. Apparently, there are regulations and protocols about frivolous or bad faith claims, and submitting a performance enhancement grievance that rotates out to be completely groundless can potentially lead to penalties for unsportsmanlike conduct or bringing the athletics into disrepute. We'll be maintaining our vision and ears open for any advancements on that front. If Sasnovich's trainer concludes up getting slapped with a substantial penalty for his actions, you can wager we'll cover it right here on Court Vision Plus. The broader implications of this account extend beyond just one competition or one competition. This incident elevates significant inquiries about the culture of professional tennis and how we manage circumstances where showing appears too solid to be genuine. Should trainers be permitted to require urgent performance enhancement examinations based purely on their subjective evaluation of a rival's physical capabilities? Does that open the entrance for harassment and bad faith claims designed to rattle young competitors? Or is it a necessary protection to ensure that distrusts can be investigated rapidly before proof disappears? These are complex inquiries without simple responses. But what appears clear is that the current arrangement, which permitted Eala to be positioned through this ordeal based on nothing more than a trainer's incapability to acknowledge defeat, needs serious examination. Clean athletes shouldn't have their greatest accomplishments instantly tarnished by groundless claims from bitter rivals. There needs to be some threshold of actual proof or reasonable distrust before someone's honor can be summoned into inquiry so publicly and dramatically. Now it's occasion to hear from you, the Court Vision Plus population, because your perspectives matter, and we want to obtain a genuine debate advancing in the comments section. What do you contemplate about the Sasnovich trainer's response to that competition? Was his requirement for urgent performance enhancement examination a genuine concern given the sudden and dramatic alteration in energy? Or was it just a salty, disrespectful maneuver designed to rattle a young competitor who had just accomplished something remarkable? Do you contemplate there should be outcomes for trainers who make false claims, or should they have complete liberty to elevate concerns no matter how groundless they might rotate out to be? And what about Eala's showing in that third portion? Is that for love turn around the peak competition of her profession her so far? Or have you witnessed her accomplish something even more impressive? How distant do you contemplate she can advance in the athletics if she continues cultivating at this pace? Could we be observing at a future Grand Slam victor, or are we obtaining ahead of ourselves? Deposit all your contemplations, perspectives, heated captures, and responses in the comments section below. We interpret every single comment, and we adore interacting with you all. Let's obtain a real discussion, advancing about the larger issues this account elevates. Should there be stricter regulations about when and how performance enhancement claims can be made? Does the current arrangement adequately protect clean athletes from harassment? Let us understand where you stand. If you enjoyed this extensive, profound plunge into the Abu Dhabi spectacle, if you appreciated us capturing the occasion to give you the complete account with all the context and specifics that other outlets are too frightened to contact, then accomplish us a huge favor and smash that like option. It genuinely assists the channel expand and permits YouTube understand that this is the variety of in-depth, no-holds-barred tennis coverage that people want to witness. Every single like makes a distinction, and we appreciate each and every one of you who captures the occasion to strike that option. And if you haven't already subscribed to Court Vision Plus, what are you waiting for? We don't just report the scores and proceed on. We inform you the genuine accounts behind the competitions, the spectacle that occurs distant from the recording devices, the disputes that the established tennis media is too polite or too frightened to address. Strike that subscribe option and ring the notification bell so you never miss another upload. We've obtained so much more explosive content arriving your manner, and you're not going to want to miss a single episode. This is Court Vision Plus, your residence for uncensored tennis truth, signing off. Until next occasion, maintain your rackets ready and your vision open, because in the universe of professional tennis, you never understand when the subsequent controversy is going to shatter. We'll witness you on the next one. Applauding, here we advance.